Can you buy an entire city? Like, assuming you have the money, is it possible? I had this question recently when I was rewatching Schitt's Creek. I don't want to spoil the premise of the show, but here's what happens.
You bought a small town in 1991, Johnny.
Wait, you actually purchased that town?
I've even had this question in the past when playing SimCity or City Skylines. Wouldn't it be cool to actually control a real-life city, not just a virtual one? So recently, I decided to investigate this question myself. I took a long, perilous half-hour journey up Highway 1 to the town of Harmony. That's right, Harmony, California, population 18. The entire city is a little over 2 acres, and the main street is 1 block long. At the turn of the last century, it was the hub for the area's dairy industry, and featured a creamery, school, shops, worker housing, post office, and a gas station. It was a favorite stop for newspaper magnate William Randolph Hearst on his way to his castle just north of here. Today, you can still buy ice cream from the creamery. And if you had a couple $1 million in 2014, you could have bought the whole town. That's what happened, and the entire town is owned by one family. At any given time, there are plenty of towns for sale all over the world. For less than a house in California, you could own a whole Romanian village. You could buy an entire Wild West ghost town in Colorado for just over $1 million. But owning a ghost town is really different than owning Schitt's Creek, where people actually live, at least in the show. So to answer the question posed in this video, yes, you can buy your own town, but there are definitely some levels to this, and the deeper you go, the more you find yourself dealing with municipal incorporation law and weird hypotheticals like Elon Musk owning all of Austin, Texas. So come along with me down this strange and surprising path to understanding what it really means to own a city after the bike bell. Like I said, there are levels to owning a town, so let's start at the beginning. The easiest way to do it is just to scrape together $1 million or so and buy yourself an actual ghost town. Ghost towns used to be thriving cities on their own, but today are generally empty husks of buildings, often on a single large property that makes it easy for someone to purchase. A quick web search will yield a bunch of different listings from all over the world, though many are in the western United States. Former mining towns and railroad towns can be found scattered throughout rural areas of the Rocky Mountains. Ghost towns deserve their own video, maybe a Halloween special, but they do make obvious candidates to buy. They can be challenging to renovate, as they're often remote. One great example of this is documented on the channel Ghost Town Living, where Brent Underwood bought his own town and mine of Cerro Gordo in the Owens Valley of California for $1.4 million in 2018. He's put a ton of work into restoring the company town to its former glory, but it's not easy. Many of the structures are in severe disrepair, and in some cases he's basically rebuilding from scratch. But Brent can say he owns a town, which is pretty cool. You don't have to stop at purchasing a dilapidated mining town, though. The next level up is to purchase an almost functioning town. This is like the Harmony example from the intro. There's a nice little story about the name of the town Harmony. It was founded in 1869 around a creamery that was supported by the local dairy industry. After competition got so fierce that someone was shot and killed, they agreed to live in, well, Harmony, and hence the town was named. The creamery closed in 1955, and its post office in the 1970s. It's had its ups and downs since then, but really only consisted of an art studio and a winery by the 2000s. Today, it's not really a town, as people don't live here permanently, though you can stay in an Airbnb. But it has a sign along the highway saying 18 people live here, so it almost seems real. Now, can we move one step up towards a real city? Could you really buy a place where people already live? Well, a few years ago, the town of Campo, California went on the market. This wasn't a ghost town. About 100 people lived in Campo, with a couple thousand in the surrounding area. The area for sale included a VFW hall, a church, post office, hardware store, and some converted army barracks that serve as housing. Campo was near the US-Mexico border, and Border Patrol agents lived there. I couldn't find any record of how much the city sold for, but the previous owner of Campo bought it in the early 2000s, so it's definitely changed hands as a real estate property. So what's the next step after Campo? Well, Campo isn't legally a town or city or anything like that. It's an unincorporated community in San Diego County. That means that there's no local Campo government, no mayor or city council. So if you bought Campo, you'd really be buying a collection of buildings, not a true city. Would it be possible to actually buy a city with a local government? This is where things get pretty hypothetical, as I couldn't find an instance of this actually happening. One way to do it is to purchase an unincorporated community and turn it into a legal city. You'd have to go through the process of municipal incorporation. Here in the United States, that's handled at the state level, and every state has its own separate process and set of standards. For example, you only need to have 300 residents in your proposed city to apply for incorporation in Maryland, but you need at least 12,000 in Massachusetts. Fun fact, the state of Delaware is essentially close to incorporation because they've already incorporated everywhere that makes sense in this small state, so they don't have any incorporation laws. There are some commonalities though. In most states, a certain number or certain percentage of people living in the community need to sign a petition asking for incorporation. They take that petition to the county government, which reviews it against the standards for incorporation, things like population that I just mentioned. If they say okay, they can hold a local election, and if a majority of people in the proposed community vote yes, a new city is born. This would obviously be a momentous day for you as the owner of the city. You purchased a scrappy little village, fixed it up, got people to move there, and now it's a legal city. The only problem is now the city's not yours anymore, not really, unless you decided to run for mayor and then win, and even then you'd have a city council to deal with. Really, you're just the city's largest landlord. You may have even lost some land in the process if some of the private streets became public, maintained by the local government. And just because you own a lot of land doesn't mean you get to control local politics, though you're definitely a key stakeholder. But land doesn't vote, people do, and sometimes people don't like their landlords. Municipal incorporation might be a bridge too far for somebody who wants to own a city. It might be better just to call your ghost town a city and leave it at that. You don't really hear of many cities becoming a city through incorporation just because the largest landowner wants bragging rights or whatever. They do it because they want more direct control over municipal services like police and fire, or to protect property values. Other places do it to avoid annexation by a nearby city. But there is one level above municipal incorporation. That's getting so rich that you can just buy all of the property in an existing, already incorporated city. As we just discussed, this doesn't make you mayor or anything like that, but if you're already so sociopathic that you've accumulated billions of dollars, buying an entire city might seem like a good idea to you. No billionaire could buy New York City, though a billionaire did become its mayor. You need to be a trillionaire, as all the land was assessed at $1.3 trillion in 2022. But there are more affordable cities to buy. The total assessed value of Austin, Texas is only $139 billion, only, putting it in reach of billionaires like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos. A city like Detroit is even more affordable, clocking in at only $7 billion in assessed value. Smaller towns yet are even cheaper, obviously. You could buy all the property in Hughes County, South Dakota for $1.7 billion. It's a good deal as that county is home to the political heart of the state, Pierre. Sorry, just checking Pierre off my list of cities I've mentioned in videos. Only about 18,967 to go. I'm trying to catch them all. Now anyway, these prices are obviously assessed values, not fair market values, and the values may differ. I mean, if somebody caught wind of you trying to buy up the entire city, they might hold out for more money or just not sell to you at all. But a rich person could theoretically buy up an existing legal city. The problem still is that they would own the land and they wouldn't control the government. So their dreams of controlling a real-life city's skylines would remain a fantasy. And that's probably for the best because a real city has real people living in it, and you don't want any one person to have a video game level of power over their lives. Can we bring this video back to Schitt's Creek? Absolutely. The Roses own the property the city sits on, but Roland is the elected mayor of the city, which means that Schitt's Creek is an incorporated city with an elected government.
That's right, I'm the mayor.
Roland is well aware that despite the Rose family's power in the city, he too has political power and is not afraid to remind them. The moral of the story, if you want to own a city and control it entirely, maybe don't incorporate, and maybe don't even have real people there at all. The other moral of the story is, even after doing all this research, I still kind of want to buy a city of my own. I mean, Harmony was a pretty cute place. Maybe I should set up a Patreon tier list for like $1 million that you can all sign up for, and maybe we can buy a town together. It would make for some pretty great content. We'll see. Let me know in the comments what you think. The other moral of the story is that it's probably not a good idea to have visions of becoming a complete dictator over a city, controlling the lives of real people. The world has enough wannabe dictators and actual dictators as it is already. Now, the tricky thing about living in today's world is that one person's dictator is another person's heroic leader. It can be hard to cut through the spin and figure out what's actually going on. For example, as I'm working on this video, former President Trump is asking a federal court for complete immunity on insurrection charges. This is the kind of story that gets reported on very differently based on the perspective of the news organization doing the reporting. I know that's the case because I'm using Ground News, a website that aggregates news articles and can tell you the political lean of various sources. There's this handy graphic over here that shows you that for this story, most sources are actually in the center, but there is a slight leftward partisan lean in the sources. Ground News even presents summaries that also have their own political lean. It's super cool. Ground news also makes it easy to compare headlines to see how this bias might affect framing. For example, these left-leaning headlines use phrases like "judge skeptical" and "Trump lawyer backtracks" to possibly insinuate a weak argument on Trump's behalf. Then on the right, you have headlines using phrases like "to claim absolute immunity" and "Trump campaigns for appeals court," which seem to shift the weight in Trump's favor. Ground news was designed by a former NASA engineer on a mission to give readers an easy, data-driven way to read the news. I certainly find it helpful when researching video topics. I can better understand what's true and what's not, and what's spin and what's not. My favorite feature might be the blind spot feed, which highlights stories that are disproportionately covered by one side of the political spectrum. It can help you find stories that you might have missed had you stayed in your curated social media bubble. Ground news is a fantastic tool for sifting through all the misinformation and bias out there. It gives you all the tools you need to be a good, critical thinker. I can't recommend it enough. In fact, I believe Ground News is so useful that I'm offering 30% off their Vantage subscription. You can only access this discount through my link, so go to ground.news/citybeautiful or go click on the link on screen or in the description and go support an independent media platform working to make the world's news more transparent.